Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So right now we're gonna go ahead with arguably and quite possibly the most debated, heated and / loved videos that I release every 6 months. So now we have discussed top 10 of every single class. We started with skill class, which I perceive to be the weakest in the game, carried on in the order of their rankings, quote unquote, that I personally gave them upon my personal opinion, finished with science, who I perceive to be the strongest class in game, and now we're gonna be talking about 13. That's right. I got the list down to 10, but the 3 champions that didn't make it to top 10, well, I first of all, I think I would have caused a civil war if I didn't include them in the list. And as I was recording the previous version of the video with top 10 champions, I realized that the list should be top 13, not because I really wanted to fit them in, because more so that I feel that there is a bigger drop after the 13 than there is after top 10. So I do consider these top 13 to be like true representatives of current meta in the game and the peak and the top of that meta, and that's why this time we are going with 13. A lucky number, right? What wrong could happen using number 13 in 2020? Right, so we're gonna start with number 13, and that would be Corvus Glaive. That's right, I initially left out Corvus Glaive, and the reason why he is 13th is largely because I think that the quest design is shifting quite significantly, and I still love everything he does. I love him in AQ, even though AQ now is mutant centric, so we get more incentives for not using the guy, which again doesn't really speak well for him, but can be easily overlooked. Overall, I do think that the designs of the new quests and new content aren't overly friendly to him. Not that he's unusable by any means. I used him just now in 7.1 and so on and so forth, but I just kind of feel that he's getting more and more either bad matchups or matchups where he doesn't quite shine in, and the node combinations that I see in the content quite frequently kind of prevent me from using him. Still a fantastic champion, still an absolute AQ GOAT, still can blitz through so much content, but nonetheless I do feel like his relevance is somewhat dropping or significantly dropping, partially due to the things that what he does is like very quick bursty damage output, can kind of be done with more and more champions these days, and still overall definitely a fantastic champion. I just don't see myself relying on him as more anymore. Next up, we're going to go on to spot number 12, and spot number 12 is Omega Red. Now, Omega Red definitely has a lot going for him, ignoring passive damage. The way he delivers damage is quite fantastic. I spoke about him quite extensively overall, but he's another one of those champions, even though where he's quite often relatively good or great for the fight. I think just some of the game's natural tendencies starting to make this guy harder and harder to use. For instance, opponents much more frequently somehow, some way go unblockable now, and one of the kind of like relatively common things with the Omega Red is you block or hold the block next to the opponent to build up the spores or hit their block, but you cannot hang around the opponent as comfortably anymore if they are unblockable or have a chance to go unblockable these days, and we have had a ton of nodes that enable them to do so, or champion abilities to begin with. And in addition to that, for instance, opponent champion special attack animations seemingly start to last longer and longer and longer. And there is a significant difference in how easy or tricky it is to use Omega Red, for instance, when you're going up against Captain Marvel, where both special attacks last barely a second, or if you're going up against, I don't know, Cosmic Ghost Rider or New Daredevil Netflix level 1 animation where he does insane capoeira dance routine and takes 25 seconds to do so. And all of that inadvertently definitely hurts Omega Red, because it is much trickier to keep his spores up, because it's much trickier to kind of like time it all perfectly. And he's still a fantastic champion, and I know so many people who do so many insane things using Omega Red, and I use Omega Red when I find him to be one of the better options. But overall, I think this is where he belongs in my mind right now. I'm gonna go on spot number 11, and spot number 11 is gonna go to Aegon. And Aegon, everybody looks at him as like this big Everest type of content clearing machine. If you need to get Labyrinth done, bring in Aegon. If you need to get Abyss done, bring in Aegon. And that's true. He is like the best and one of the most vital and necessary pieces in order to accomplish that. But due to increase of health pools and due to the nature of 6.3, 6.4, and now 7.1, he's absolutely insanely fantastic for all those pieces of content as well, because for Aegon to transform from a meh champion to insanely good already, you only really need to get to about 150 combos stored away, because at that point you have access to true accuracy, you crit through blocks, you deal a ton of damage, you shrug off all debuffs, and that's crazy good in itself. And then anything else that comes afterwards obviously is also beneficial and making him even stronger, especially once you get 300 combo. But basically at 100-150 combo rate, he's already crazy good champion, and since we are getting bigger and bigger health pools, and our own champions doesn't seem to be quite growing up at the same pace, it seems like the fights are getting longer and longer overall, Aegon obviously starts to shine there more and more, and he was absolutely fantastic for 6.3, 6.4. I even use him in 7.1 for some lanes as well. And yeah, Aegon it is at spot number 11. Now spot number 10 is gonna go to Hyperion, because Hyperion seems to be like, I don't know, immortal, like a fine wine. I think Hyperion is so much better today. At least I look at him with a lot more value today than I did when he was released. And seemingly every single time I do make one of these lists, Hyperion either maintains his position or climbs up higher. But the point is, Hyperion somehow, with a very, very simple kind of like a ability kit, maintains his relevance, because the truth of the matter is that much extra power gain can always find an outlet, and that's an extremely potent ability to have. The fact that you can exclusively throw special attacks if you choose to do so is crazy. I have discussed where Hyperion is great and isn't great in my Cosmic video, but to put it kind of like quite briefly, yes, he's not the most potent AW offensive champion, but overall he has put in work in every single chapter of Act 6. He is great for a bunch of variants. You can use him in extra large variant. You can even use him in tech champion variant because of his superbly high damage output. He was useful in variant 4. In any quest you could actually use him. Actually variant 5, you can't bring him in variant 6, he's not going to be a villain. But other than that, he's one of the best Alliance quest champions, hands down, because he can adapt to so many different nodes. He can do buffed up, he can do distract. I don't know, he can do Spider-Verse heroes, he can do the one where you pull, where you need to use projectile attacks, he can do Pleasure to Burn, and he can do Caustic Tempers, and I have actually, his damage output is so high that I have frequently used him for Can't Stop, Won't Stop in IQ, because he just seems to do those lanes extremely well. And overall, he's one of the kind of like best workhorse versatile champions in the game, and I think any account benefits from having access to him. Right, now we're gonna try and speed up because we do have a lot of champions to go through. Now come Magneto, and Magneto is the absolute insane metal destroyer. I think that the potency of that damage output, in addition with ability accuracy reduction, reversing regens, and everything else he does, is gonna make sure he stays relevant for a really, really long time. Magneto an absolute go-to for rework. Only 2020 product that has made here. I don't think anything else that has come out in 2020 is quite strong or competitive enough to make it on this list, but Magneto is a rework that came out in 2020 and is definitely deserving and capable. Such an absolute beast, even unduped. He can put in so much work. He one-shots bosses in 7.1 with like one level 3. How crazy is that? And yeah, I love Magneto, and I think he's very, very valuable champion. One thing I don't love about him is his playstyle. The fact that you have to hold your heavy attack just slows the game down even further. And it could be mentally in my brain, but I generally don't enjoy using him too much. I do enjoy using his special attacks and watching the opponent's health bar disappear, but getting to the special attacks is a bit tedious. And I know I'm saying it as I actually use the guy in like Abyss of Legends, where he can one-shot 5-point-something mil opponents, the big stacked health pools, and one-shot Howard the Duck with this guy in Abyss. So that just puts his damage out in perspective as well. Spot number 8, I'm going to give a champion who I rank directly above him is Colossus, because Colossus is very simple. It's a ton of immunities with absolute insane damage, and then there are some additional niche utilities, quite obviously. For instance, when his ability accuracy gets reduced, he gains a crazy amount of power gain, or the fact that he's armor break immune against non-tech champions is more and more helpful these days. I also like how he kind of passively stuns opponents with his heavy attacks, and if you have paid attention, whenever you parry the opponent and launch the heavy attack, when you convert the stun debuff in passive fury, the opponents never seem to evade, and I actually use him as a quite stable evade counter at situations as well. But overall, I think just the tankiness, immunities, versatility, and the absolute bonkers damage output. To put his damage output in perspective as well, I did Labyrinth of Legends run using 4-star Colossus and like 7 revives total with a 4-star. I did Labyrinth of Legends run using my 5-star Colossus, and when he broke through Assassin's range, he actually crit for over 500,000 damage. He crit for 555,000 damage in Labyrinth of Legends. And that's completely bonkers, man. There are videos to all of that on the channel, so if you type in Colossus KT1, you can find those, just to make sure that I am not waffling over here. That happened, and yeah, I absolutely love him. I do think that he's a beneficial character to have for pretty much any account. It does need to be duped quite badly, in my opinion. At about 670 is the sweet spot. And obviously Omega Red is like the main synergy where you want to bring him in, which in my opinion quite often pretty much makes him even better. Because we all have champions that we use that rely on synergies, like Ghost for instance. And then we have to bring in Wasp and Hood. Now I'm not trying to shit on Wasp and Hood at all. I do like Wasp a lot. I'm not the biggest fan of Hood. But the fact that you have to use those champions, and those might not quite be the top shelf champions that you would ideally want to bring in a quest. In case of Colossus is minimized by far, because if you're using Colossus and you have to bring in Omega Red, it's like, oh well, I guess I'll deal with it. It's like, you know, oh my god, the sacrifice I need to use Omega Red, like with Colossus. So yeah, the fact that he's synergized with great champions definitely helps him a lot as well. Okay, now let's move on to spot number 7. And spot number 7 is possibly the biggest leap in history. And I personally, again, overlooked the character initially, and I was skeptical for a really long time. This Human Torch, and whether I like it or not, he's one of those champions that I have slowly but surely started to rely on. He is a staple in my Alliance War offensive team. I use him frequently for exploring more difficult piece of content, and obviously Human Torch has the elephant in the room kind of like condition where he's total garbage or close to barely mediocre in certain matchups. But any matchups where he works, where opponents use the energy attacks, or where you're up against the Mystic champions, or where you have some nodes that help you gain those smolders quicker, he just turns into an absolute Terminator. And the fact that Kabam has started rethinking their policy towards content and stopped corkscrewing their opponent attack to infinity and beyond, but actually brought it down to a reasonable degree where he can tank a blocked hit, just meant so much for Human Torch, much more for any other champion in this top 10 list, because he is significantly more fragile than the rest of them, a smaller health pool, no way to regen, and also he relies quite heavily on dropping those heavy attacks and getting that temperature up in a lot of matches, and that has been wonders for Human Torch, because if now you can take a hit in a block and get your temperature up, obviously Human Torch is so much more effective. And in Abyss, I would almost say that he is the most potent horseman, because he is the horseman of Abyss that actually gets the one-shots. In any fight where you can use him, he can pretty much one-shot. He one-shots like Mordos, Mr. Sinisters, Mephistos, Dormammus, Morning Stars, and who else? Loki, who again has the big stacked health pool. And out of all of the horsemen, he is the one that gets solos in most frequently, so I think he's kind of like the more important one, to be honest. I would rather try and explore Abyss without Aegon than without Human Torch, probably. Maybe with the exception of the boss fight. But yeah, Human Torch definitely has produced some incredible results. Become one of the 5 most used Alliance War champions, and is a staple at a well-established roster these days. So here we go, spot number 7. Spot number 6 is gonna go to Captain America Infinity War, who I overall still value above Human Torch, as I explained in my science ranking video, just because he's really great for pretty much every single game mode at any given progression level. He's such a hardworking champion, so sustainable because he has like pretty much perfect parries, he can block for days, he can access a bunch of different debuffs and a bunch of different utility, he can fine-tune and access the abilities that you personally need the most. Then obviously countering the Unstoppables, access to bleed as well, passive fury, and a whole bunch of wonderful things. I cannot say enough about this character. Spent a lot of time talking about him in the science video, so I don't want to do it right now, but if you're playing MCOC and if you're thinking whether you should rank up this guy and whether you should invest into this guy, any champion rank up until 6-star level, I will say immediately go for it. You will not regret it. Especially even 3-star still has perfect block, so I can use 3-star in like Act 5 or something. Anyways, but at the 6-star, I do think one of his bigger downsides is the absolute reliance on Sig 200, and especially due to the skill ability here, where 100% chance whenever a debuff is gained, consume 1 kinetic charge to purify it. It's quite as simple as that, but it's only 100% if you're max Sig. And shrugging of debuffs is such a big and important deal that I personally wouldn't want any RNG chance in it involved. And if I would have a Sig 100 Captain America Infinity War, I wouldn't use him. I would use my 5-star Sig 200, just because even if there is 20% chance for him not to shrug off that debuff, if it's a big bleed, if it's a big incinerate, if it's a stun or something, I'd be screwed. So when it comes to ranking up your 6-star Cap Infinity War, you're more than welcome to do so. Just keep in mind that you will need to push him to Sig 200 as quickly as possible to unlock his full utility. And until you do so, he's going to be somewhat lesser of a champion without it. Right, spot number 5, we're gonna go on. Spot number 5 is gonna go to tech class, and that's Warlock. And Warlock is just continuing to shred through the contest, man. Again, when you read through the Warlock's abilities, there's nothing really that amazing. The damage is alright, and anything that he does seems kind of like balanced and alright. But everything he does also happens to be what you need him to do. He has immunities to bleed, poison, cold snap, and frostbite. Then he has bleed on heavy attacks, which enables him to do like bleed nodes and having like debuffs an opponent. Then he has access to shock, arguably not the greatest one, but still is there if need be. Armor breaks on level 2 and bunch of damage on level 2. Power control and heal control, pretty much the best heal control ability in the game, I think. Because nothing's immune to it, it doesn't get like shrugged off or anything like that, it's not classed as a heal block, and you still manage to degenerate the opponents for it. I, again, will not spend too much time talking about Warlock, but I think he's the 2nd most popular champion in Tier 1 Alliance Wars. I use him in AQ frequently as well. Definitely use him in a bunch of questing scenarios. Used him to beat a bunch of Act 7.1 bosses, for instance the Red Hulk, where he had Buffet node active. I think I used him against Green Goblin as well, and a bunch of other opponents, and he does fantastic against all of it. He does selective time stream, so he can deal with Hyperion, and yeah, I think he's an absolute tank of a champion, and he's one of those champions that seemingly gets more and more useful as time goes by. Right now, spot number 4, I'm going to place Nick Fury. Nick Fury, quite honestly, from day-to-day base, is the most used champion. I have a rank 3 6-star Nick Fury and a rank 5 5-star Nick Fury, and more often than you'd think, I actually wish I had another Nick Fury that I can use. Yes, I obviously have 4-star, but 4-stars can be brought in Act 6 or 7 now. And there are just so many things that make him so practical. First and foremost, he's one of the most potent synergy champions that help out so many different champions. Like, he can make pretty much any champion relatively suicide friendly by being able to shrug off a debuff and healing them at start of the fight. Synergy with Quake, which is, again, insane champion, and that gives you those away charges, which quite often lets you play a lot more aggressively and safely at the same time. And the fact that he gives attack to all your hero champions. So he's always kind of like good to have around and benefits your team even if you're not using him. So he has had a huge impact on my account and the way I play the game just by the synergies alone. And then to top it all off, he's a crazy good champion himself. First great thing that obviously everybody is going to know about it, he has basically access to double health pool, which just again lets you be a lot more aggressive and feel a lot more safe, which is why he's also so important. For instance, in Alliance War, you can go in Alliance War, anybody can use Nick Fury, it's perfect, and if you do happen to mess up, Life Model Decoy kicks in and you have a second chance at not giving away the death there, and that's awesome. And when you enter your second life, then all the bonuses and damage output that you get are quite insane, and his damage output can definitely be up there. I think I uploaded Labyrinth of Legends kill in what was it, like under 60 hits with Nick Fury. So this guy is capable of dealing 1.5 million health in under 60 hits, which again is insane. It's such high damage output, and obviously we all know like most of his damage revolves around his bleeds, so he does significantly better in any matchup where he can bleed the opponents. But he can hit hard with his Furies as well, even if you're going up against the bleeding unit. And he wouldn't come in like in the middle somewhere as a hard-hitting champion, even if he doesn't have access to bleeds. He has one of the highest short to medium fight damage outputs in the game if you can bleed the opponent, and he would still be easily in the upper half even if you can't bleed the opponent. And then obviously the ability to shrug off debuffs, ability to prevent miss effects, evade, and all the other shenanigans that he can access to is just crazy. I absolutely love Nick Fury, and I think he's becoming, again, more and more stable and frequently admitted champion as like one of the top champions in the game. Spot number 3, and the last one that people will be kind of interested in, is Dr. Doom. Now, Dr. Doom has dominated Marvel Concept Champions for the last year. Every single game mode he's excellent for. When he does a fight, he just doesn't actually fight, he controls the fight, and you feel as if though you're playing while the opponent is watching, because when you put the opponent in Doom cycle, there is not a whole lot of they can do. In addition, you deal a ton of damage, you're totally in control, and even if something does go wrong, you don't worry about it because Doom is such a tank. And yeah, again, I think he's, if I remember correctly, he's the most used Alliance War champion, so he's Alliance War King right now. In addition, he's a staple for pretty much any questing team. He definitely has back problems because he's carrying the entire Mystic class so hard for so long that he should get some help. But that's how big he's become. If we think about, okay, so we need to bring in a good Mystic champion, everybody immediately goes to Dr. Doom. Previously, before Dr. Doom arrived, there was always discussion, who do you want to use, or who should you use, or who would be better, or whatever, or should we invest in Morningstar, or should we invest in this and that. And as soon as Dr. Doom dropped, once people realized how good he is, all that discussion and finished, and Dr. Doom is de facto the definition of Mystic class within himself. There's power control, there's buff control, there's staggers, he's tanky, he obviously benefits from Mystic Dispersion, and he can slap the opponents in the corner like nobody's business. That slap animation is amazing. I love it. And yeah, Dr. Doom, crazy, and I think currently third best champion in the game. And then we have top 2, and the top 2 I'm not going to discuss too much. Now we have Ghost. Ghost can do so much. All damage over time effects can be converted into passive Furies, bypass evade, doesn't have to rely on standard means of finding an opening, can easily perform an intercept. combined with Hood synergy, can tank special 3s and just ignore any damage over time effects, and that includes stuff that pretty much nothing else can ignore, like degenerations and omega spores and stuff like that. So that's incredibly useful, and I have spoken about Ghost for dozens of hours by this time, I think, in between all my videos, but it's definitely insane, and she's still crazy good, and still was useful in 7.1, maybe not everywhere, but she still did so much in that it's hard to deny how good and how quick Ghost is. Then we have Quake, who I believe to be the most bonker, broken thing in the game currently, just because she completely ignores pretty much all of the game mechanics. And any fight where you can use Quake effectively becomes the exact same fight, but that means that they're not hard and you don't have to jump through some sort of hoops, and that also gives you some sort of sense of invincibility, where it might be the hardest fight in the world, but Quake is going to take it like it's an arena fight, and you're going to not feel any difference doing so. And that just doesn't work in this game. It's too good. Honestly, it's too good. I love Quake. I love quaking well, but it's too good for MCOC. I think if we had any more champions like Quake, this game would probably turn into a shit show. So I can understand why Quake is not coming as a 6-star, at least for any time soon. Which, again, saddens me deeply, because she is my favorite champion in the game. And as I said before, this is the last time I'm including any champions in this list that are not available as 6-stars in the game, because that's where the game's headed. Within half a year, 6-star rank 3 offense and defense and questing themes, I think, will largely have become the norm for the top-end content. And yeah, if there's no 6-star version of the character, I don't think they're going to be able to keep up. All that being said, I'm extremely sad to say that about Quake and Hyperion. Are the only 2 champions in the top 10 that don't have 6-star versions out. I think that we could potentially see Hyperion be added. I don't think we're going to see Quake be added for another 1.5 years or 2 or 2.5 years. So Quake #1 forever in my heart, but for the last time on these rankings lists, if she doesn't come out as a 6-star. But yeah, that's all I had to say today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, hit that like button, hit that sub button, hit all the buttons, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya.